Let's welcome Professor Sundell from Tsinghua University.
Okay, I can make it in 10 minutes. Okay, I will respond to Yan Chen's questions, but not now. First, I make my presentation. When we're talking about sustainability, I think we should remind ourselves that we humans, we left Africa 70,000 years ago, came to China 40,000 years ago. So what do we mean with sustainability? I mean, the Earth will be sustainable. The Earth will go on for billions of years. But what about humans? We have a very, very short history. And I will give you some example that this history may be ending quite soon. So sustainable for me is sustainable people, humans, because the Earth will be sustainable. We should also remind ourselves that the main reason why we can be in Hong Kong, Beijing, Stockholm is the invention of fire, clothing, and housing to create a climate that we humans can be sustainably. And of course, this slide I show in all my presentations, almost, and it just shows, I just want to remind you again that the main exposure for humans are air indoor, in the home. Then comes air in schools, offices, etc. Outdoor air is a tiny little piece, and perhaps the least interesting piece in what we get into our body during life. We have become 100 years older in the last, 30 years older during the last 100 years. And it's just 5 years due to medicine. It's 25 years due to hygiene and public health, which is what we are dealing with. Ventilation, indoor climate is hygiene, it's public health. And we have been more important than medicine, as I said. My main focus in the last 15 years has been what is the role of indoor air in homes for the health of people. And we are presented in this conference and many others. We started studies in Sweden in 2000, the DBH study, and we have been, this starts as a questionnaire study, cross-sectional, with, in Sweden, 11,000 children in homes, and then we make case control studies. We take 200 sick children and 200 healthy children and compare their homes. We make measurements and inspections in the homes. And then we can see what is the difference between a home where a child is sick and a home where a child is healthy. We measure everything. We made this study in Sweden, in Bulgaria, Denmark, Taiwan, Texas, Singapore, South Korea, and now in China. And we have these universities in China that are doing. It's a gigantic study. It's by far the largest study on health and environment ongoing in China. We have today data on 60,000 homes and children. And we know a lot about these homes. We know a lot about these children and their parents' health. And the idea is to find out what is the situation in China. And the situation is this. This is data 1990. This is the prevalence of asthma, the percentage of children with asthma, 2 to 6 years old. This is 2000, yes, and 2011. And you can see easily that it's a rapid increase in asthma and other allergies in China. Chinese children are suddenly getting sick. And you see, it happened during the last 10 years. So what's going on in China? Is this a sustainable development? If you look in more detail, this is doctor-diagnosed asthma, and the sickest children we have in Texas, then in Denmark, Shanghai, Taiwan, Nanjing. Chinese children are not very healthy anymore. This is rhinitis, runny nose, and other allergy. And China is, especially Wuhan, Shanghai, Beijing, have a lot. I mean, 50%, half the children have a rhinitis, which is an allergy. I mean, when we're looking at China total today, I think 65% of children do have an allergy. Up until the Cultural Revolution or until Mao died, a tiny portion of children in China had allergies. This is pneumonia, and this is pneumonia ever. Pneumonia is something we think poor children in rural areas have. These are children living in new modern apartments in big cities in China. Chinese children are sick. We published a lot of articles in Chinese Science Bulletin about this. And children are sick, and it's in these apartments. New modern apartments in China are part of making Chinese children sick. Risk factors in China: dampness, new furniture, laminated floor, paint, traffic, being close to high traffic, pets, lack of ventilation, environmental tobacco smoke. If you want to stay healthy, take out your bed linen, clean your floors often, open windows. We are getting new data from Tianjin and Tangzhou, and we're starting a new study in Suzhou. And we are starting these measurements. I don't know what happened with this slide. But is indoor air that important? I mean, the discussion in China is only about PM 2.5. And the funding, money, is for PM 2.5. This is the data from these studies. And as you can see, this is PM 10, not PM 2.5. But if PM 10 is high, PM 2.5 is high. You can see there is no association between PM and health. Actually, during these 10 years that Chinese children have become so sick, PM 10 have decreased. Instead, what are the risk factors in homes are modern chemicals, plasticizer, paint, water-based paint, cleaning agents, etc. And lack of ventilation. I will not go into detail. This is data from Sweden. The less ventilation you have in your home, in air change per hour, these are the 100 homes with the highest ventilation rate, 0.62 air change per hour. Then the risk of having a sick child is 1. If you go down to the 25% with lowest ventilation, 0.17, then the risk to have a sick child, a real sick child, is doubled. So ventilation, at least in Sweden, means something. What means most in the Swedish study is plasticizer. So it's not VOCs or particles. It may be SVOCs that are the most important pollutants indoor. The more SVOCs, these plasticizer you have in your home, in the child's bedroom, the more asthma that child have. This has been presented in many studies, and we have other chemical compounds which are as strong risk factors. And the diseases we're talking about are asthma, allergy, reproduction, worse outcomes, obesity, diabetes, autism, and especially perhaps this is the part. This is what's going to kill us. These compounds, the body think are female hormones. That means if the baby, during week 8, 9, when the baby decides to become a boy or a girl, is exposed to these compounds, we are getting more feminine. And in the end, there will be no boys. How fun. So this can be the end of humanity and animal life. So modern exposures, modern diseases. These compounds, many of them are banned in West, but the world production is going up. So where are they used? In China. Okay, I will just say one more thing. I think my time is out. Ventilation is interesting in many ways, and I've been working with it for 50, 60 years. I made a study of ventilation installations in Sweden in 1980 and found that installations don't work. We measured the ventilation, checked against the sign values and the values that were measured when it was taken in use, and it didn't work. Fans were installed in the wrong direction. Some fans were installed but had no power. 100% recirculation, even in heavy industry, was common. To have an airflow in your room within 20% of the design value is like winning the first prize in the lottery. Ventilation installations in Sweden at that time did not work. And why should it work? And we are putting a lot of effort into the design. Commissioning, not much. Testing, often nothing. Operation, who cares? Maintenance, what is that? Of course it doesn't work. So why do we have them? So I suggest in Sweden to have that there should be an obligatory test, and we have that in Sweden today. So Swedish installations work reasonably. But I am not sure they do work reasonably in China, for instance. So one last point. In Sweden, when we are erecting a house, we expect that building to stay there for 100, 200, 300 years. In China, 25, 30, 35. Is that sustainable? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Yang Sundell. Our next speaker is Professor Xu Dongyang from Tsinghua University.